Okay, so Dan Harvey doing a remote site session with Michael Liberalon. Basically, Mike, if you just do a walk around, mate, and just walk through everything that you've done to date and where you're up to now, basically, mate.
Yeah, cool. I'll start from upstairs. What I'll do is I'll flip you around so you can see what I'm actually talking about in a second. So, first off, we've got pendants in every room. We've got a category D1 LD2 smoke alarm system. So it's 3 bedrooms. So we've got TV points in various rooms. Not every room, but the majority of them. Got the light switches and all the little sockets. Got a fan isolator. Light switch that does the hallway light, as well as the landing. And then we've got the extractor, which is vented through a tile vent.
Yeah.
Obviously IP rated light fitting. And that's it for in here. Again, we've got sockets, centre pendant, light switch.
I noticed some of the sockets are quite high up. Is that for TVs? Is that part of the specification, designed with client?
Yeah, so what they're going to do is they're going to have a shelf coming across.
Yeah.
And they want it for a radio or something like that. So that's part of the specification, yes. As I showed you, or I mentioned before, some of the plaster hasn't gone up to the sockets as it should. So that's something I had to mention to the customer. And over here, these cracks in the plaster, don't know if you can just about make that out.
Just about see it, yeah.
That was obviously existing before we come back and done any kind of second fixing. So
that meets the criteria of defects when you get to site, reporting them. So you've spoken to the client, sent them some photos, or have they done a site tour?
He's been here, so it was an on-site assessment.
Cool.
Showed him around.
No problem. Cool. Let's move on.
Come downstairs. So we've got the smoke at the bottom of the stairs.
Yeah.
So, halfway through this, I've just done all my dead testing. I've got to do my live testing, which is the next stage.
Yeah.
So as you can see, there's 6 circuits. I've included the surge protection and the 40 amp MCB. Had to replace the tails because they were undersized. So that's everything here.
Cool.
Come through the kitchen. Got my apprentice just finishing off at the moment. Still need to screw a couple of base plates back before we do any live testing.
Yeah.
Boiler feed there. Got the isolators for the cooker. I'm going to utilise the socket for the fridge freezer as well, which is going to go next to it. Which has actually changed location. It was actually going to go further down, and the hob was going to be over this way, but they've changed that around a little bit. Okay. Got an extractor and an oven isolator there. Yeah. And then we've just got out the hob, which is ready for live testing. A few sockets, some more lights, hob extractor. Again, just a couple of centre pendants. Light switch. Yeah. A few more sockets. You've got a data point down here. They're going to use either for a phone or possibly for internet connection.
Okay.
Containment system for some cables.
Some HDMI's and stuff, yeah.
Stuff like that, yeah. And a TV outlet. Smoke alarm, as well. And then the heat alarm obviously completes the category LD2.
Yeah, no problem. Right, so I'm going to go through the criteria, mate, and I'm basically going to question you. So some of the stuff, obviously, I'll be a visual. Some of it will just be having a chat, mate.
Yeah.
Okay, so starting with health and safety then. So identifying workplace procedures that are relevant to the working environment and comply with their duties and obligations as defined by legislation and organisational procedures. So basically, what procedures have you put in place to make sure that, your health and safety for not only you but also your apprentice has sort of been met, if that makes sense?
Yeah, so I've made sure that we've got PPE on site and available at all times. Stuff like hard hats and masks and goggles.
Cool. Okay, so you're going to send me a risk assessment in your method statement later.
Yeah.
Obviously, you're going to pass them on to me so I can add this to evidence, which includes a safe system of work. So when you got to this place and you started rewiring it, what was the case with leaving any live circuits? Did you have to put a temporary board in? Did you have to isolate the supply to disconnect everything?
What I did is I disconnected every circuit. I left one breaker in the consumer unit and just fed a couple of sockets from it, local to the consumer unit, so that way I knew everything was dead.
Cool.
In the problem.
Okay, so what unsafe situations have you identified, not only through starting, but all the way through the project? Anything that you had to make anyone aware of, liaising with other trades to make sure you're not on top of each other, that sort of thing?
Yeah, the main thing was chasing. It's all solid walls, so we had to chase down to every socket. So there was a lot of dust, so we had to make other guys aware that it's going to be very dusty.
Yeah.
So noise as well. We had to go next door and just advise the next door neighbour that it was going to be quite noisy for a couple of the days.
Is it attached, is it, to another house?
Yes, it is, yeah. It's an end terrace, so...
Cool. Okay, so whilst you have been doing your work, have you had any hazardous materials present? Was there asbestos before you started, or anything untoward, or any lamps that you had to get rid of that, may contain mercury, that sort of thing?
There was no asbestos.
Was the check done beforehand?
By the customer, I believe, yeah.
Okay, cool. So we won't tick that one. What about any equipment that were hazardous? So working at heights, heavy cable drums, anything that you needed, maybe a 2-man lift with?
Yeah, some of the materials we ordered quite a bit of cable, which come in boxes actually. So we had to. There's a 2-man lift for the cable. That we needed.
Cool. And tools. Any hazards with your tools? Did you have to use 110? Were you using battery? If so, what did you do to make sure that when you were using those tools?
It's all cordless.
All cordless. But how do you make sure that they're in fine fettle before you start drilling a hole or chasing something out?
Just make sure the batteries are charged prior and give them a little test first.
Cool. So you identify any hazards which produced a high risk during the job. So before we started when we were planning this, you were talking about floorboards being lifted up. You mentioned a tiler knocking about there whilst you're there right now.
Yeah.
So what high risks have sort of presented themselves throughout this project?
Say that again, sorry. What?
What's presented a high risk throughout the project? Whether it be floorboards lifted.
The floorboards have been lifted quite regular. We obviously had plumbers here as well, so we had to kind of work around each other. The rooms that they were in, we worked in other rooms just to mitigate the risk of the floorboards being lifted.
And also, we're in the middle of a pandemic, so obviously that would equate to that as well. So that's a high risk situation. So I can see that you and your apprentice are working together today. If anyone else was knocking about, what have you put in place to make sure that you're both safe?
We've got masks that we can use, and we've got gloves also as well. Hand gel, which we've got access to.
Okay, so how have you controlled the measures to make sure that the hazards, didn't cause adverse effect to anyone else? Obviously, when you talk about the floorboards being lifted up, did you notify the customer? When you left for the evening, did you put them back down? Did you just notify the customer to walk?
We've got a risk assessment that kind of mitigates any large risk from that. But mainly, if we lifted a floorboard, we would put them back down almost straight away, so that it wouldn't be left up for a long period of time.
Cool. So I'm going to pick on a particular thing for the next one. So what PPE did you use whilst you were chasing out the wolves?
Hard hat, goggles, and a mask.
No problem. Okay. So how have you demonstrated your personal conduct and behaviour around the workplace to ensure that your health and safety of you and all the others around you are maintained? It's a bit of an odd one.
Yeah.
So, following your risk assessments, liaising with people.
Ensuring PPE was available and used at all times when required.
Cool. Applying procedures to make safe and use and store your tools and storage of any plant and equipment as stipulated in your workplace policy. So what's your policy on leaving tools on site overnight or locked away in your van or taken out?
Tools get locked away in the van, they get put away in their carry cases and get locked away in the van and taken home.
Cool. Okay. And your supplier information, so if you needed any extra materials, that sort of thing, you got all the information for your supplier?
Yeah, I've got customer to Devondale, so they're my supplier. So if I require anything, that's who I contact.
So when you've been using your access equipment, I saw a pair of A-frame steps in the lounge, I think it was.
Yeah.
Can you show me how you use them correctly and safely? What you would look for, make sure that they're in fine fettle, that sort of thing.
Yeah. Okay, so the first thing I check is to make sure that the rubber pads at the bottom are still there.
Yeah.
Obviously anti-slip. Ensure that the centre part is completely locked out.
Yeah.
And as per...
Just following the manufacturer's instructions, basically, yeah.
It actually says there, do not stand above this step. So go as high as that step and that's it.
And we definitely all listen to that.
Yeah.
All right, mate, so these are more knowledge-based questions because I hate to think that you have had any of these problems, but what would you do to report an incident? Have you got accident books at work? What's the process if your apprentice got injured, say?
So I would record it down. I've actually got a folder at home where I can record all these kind of problems if there were to arise. If it was a more serious one, then I'd probably fill out a riddle form and just keep obviously record of it.
Okay. So what would you do in the case of an emergency?
Call 999.
Yeah. Okay. And applying basic first aid procedures. So first of all, have you got a first aid box in your van?
Yes.
Okay. And if it got more serious, what would you then do if you are first aid trained? That is.
Doctor's ABC.
Yeah. Perfect. Okay. So that's the health and safety bit covered, mate. So you can relax.
Yeah.
Okay. So more into the stuff that you're doing every day. Okay. So looking at overseeing and organising the work. So think of this as a couple of months ago when you first started this project as opposed to now potentially. Identify any additional information that may be required, such as health and safety information. Well, I think now we're in COVID, that's quite clear. All right. And you've already talked about that, so I'm happy with that. Isolation procedures for any products in case of emergency. So let's talk about your temporary supply that you installed. Had you notified sort of everyone on site if there was an accident or there's a problem, this is how you isolate it, that sort of thing?
Yes, yeah. That one isolating point, so it would be quite simple for someone that didn't know what they were doing to isolate it.
Cool. Okay, so overseeing health and safety, again, producing a risk assessment, you're going to send that, yeah. Following procedures to confirm work is being completed within health and safety legislation and industry standards. That's fine, you've already talked about that. Okay, so monitor your operative. So this is organising your apprentice, basically. I've seen him knocking about there on the video. When you have been working together, how do you make sure that when he's following a programme of work, he's also sticking to industry working practices, so i.e. regs?
I check everything that he does.
Yeah.
Giving him an example of how to do it first, and then I check him as he reaches different stages.
Yeah, cool. What year is he? Is he a senior or junior apprentice?
Junior, he's second year.
Cool. Okay, so then moving on to how do you make sure that he is keeping in accordance with health and safety requirements for your business via your risk assessments or whatever? How do you maintain that he isn't doing something stupid, basically?
By keeping a close eye on him. I check him at least every half an hour. And ensure that he's only doing job to his abilities as well.
Perfect. Okay, so you've liaised with other trades. We've talked about that. The plumbers. Estimated the amount of time for work to be completed. Now, this is a bit of a tricky one, isn't it, mate? Because you started this pre-COVID.
Yeah, this obviously the first fix was fine. We managed to get that done in time, but I think the work in between that has taken a lot longer. So
yeah,
project's gone on for a lot longer than what it probably would have done.
Yeah, cool. And how do you communicate with others clearly and concisely? You know, do you communicate with the client in person, email, phone?
It's always in person or via a phone call.
Okay, so identify situations where it's necessary to liaise with other parties to resolve issues. So this could be your cracked wall, your plastering not done right. It could be that the plumber's put something in the wrong place, the kitchen fitter's put something in the wrong place, you've put something in the wrong place, but it affects others. So that sort of thing. Anything gone on like that? Resolve issues. So anything that's come up where you've gone, right, I need to speak to the plumber about this, or I need to speak to the chippy about this?
Well, I mean, I've had to speak to the plasterer about the bits upstairs, but they haven't plastered up to the socket.
Yeah.
Obviously, pretty.
And it's not something you want to get involved with, I'm guessing.
No.
Okay, so demonstrating procedures for organising the provision of the following materials. How did you deal with getting your materials? Were they delivered to site? Did you pick them up?
I always write a list of the materials and then call through to Devondale, order over the phone and get them delivered.
Okay.
I picked up the materials for this morning, rung ahead, so that when I got there they were ready to go.
Is that more to do with COVID as opposed to?
Yeah. Whereas previously, I'd probably just get them delivered to site.
So obviously you said you were talking about testing earlier. You've done your dead testing. Again, you're going to send on the certificates to me once you're done this evening. So I'll upload them tomorrow. Measuring and test instruments. So that is organising your Mega, whatever tester you're using. I think you use a Mega because I saw you on site last time.
Yeah.
How do you make sure that it's sort of fit for purpose? It's all good.
Well, ensure that it stays in calibration. But also give it a check over every now and again for any damage.
I'm assuming it's always on the van?
Yes.
Yeah. Same with your steps?
I take it in during the night.
Cool. Any steps or anything like that left in the van? So you've got equipment constantly available to you for access?
Yeah. My steps are always in my van and my hop up as well.
When you were sort of quoted for the job, did you know the whole time that you need an apprentice, or was that already factored in?
It was already factored in.
Cool. Same with the tools and the same as components. Okay, so when you do receive your kit from Devondale, was it? How do you make sure they're the right type, fit for purpose, suitable for be cost effective, and in the correct quantity? So starting from the top, the right type.
The right type, I check them to make sure that the right bits of material that I've ordered.
Yeah. So when you're putting the specification together or putting the quote together, how are you checking that they're the right type, i.e. IP rated bathroom light, for instance?
The manufacturer's instructions on it.
Yeah, SPD, that sort of thing, just checking against regs, that sort of thing.
Yeah.
Okay, fit for purpose, obviously that sort of covers that anyway. Suitable to be worked on cost effectively. So is there anything there that you sort of the customers sort of suggested, but you thought actually this would be a better alternative for not only cost for you, implications for you, but maybe more efficient to fit, LEDs, that sort of thing?
He wanted to. He actually wanted fancy halogen bulbs, but I advised him that they'd be more costly, so he's actually decided not to get them. He's now going to get LEDs.
Okay, cool. Okay, in the correct quantity, yes, we covered that, so you count them when you're in. So how do you check they're undamaged at source? Just as you've already said, you check them.
Yep.
And then what do you do with the materials? So you talked about your tools and stuff. What about the materials? Are they left on site? Are they locked in the cupboard on site or something like that? Or are they taken in the van again?
The site is locked overnight, so I leave the materials here.
Cool. Okay. Again, ensuring yourself and health and safety of the mothers in the work location. We've covered that. Identify and use suitable personal protective equipment. We've covered that. Preparatory work. So starting, so sort of like preparatory work. So beforehand, if that makes sense. Interpretation of installation specification and the materials that you're going to use. How did you do that? Did you do a site walk with the client before this COVID stuff kicked off? You know, what was the planning process of this? You know, how deep did you go with the client?
Yeah, already agreed right at the beginning, right at the early stages, what was going to be used. So it was a couple of nights up here, just walking through with the actual client and just discussing what he actually wanted and how he wanted it to look.
Okay, so obviously you've put together the specifications, so you know materials are of the right type. Identification of suitable methods, procedures and practices, yes, confirmed. So site readiness, so obviously we aren't, you know, as electricians we're not the first on site usually. How did you confirm that the site was ready for work to begin? So thinking back to ages ago, you know, who gave you the nod to start the work, basically?
Well, the client.
Yeah. Did you come and do like a run when you're driving past or anything? Did you go and check that was the case? Because sometimes the client can be wrong, can't they? You know, if there's like loads of plumbers kicking about and you're thinking, I ain't working amongst all that.
Yeah. Well, I made sure that there was not going to be anyone else here while we were working when we were doing the first fix.
Cool. That's fine. So storage facilities, we've done all that. Safe isolation carried out whilst you were doing your first fixing, mate. Obviously you had that one circuit energized and you said you removed the old circuits. Now, was that completely cutting out all the old wiring or just removing them from the break?
Completely cutting out and pulling out the actual consumer unit itself.
So when you did that, obviously before you started doing all that, safe isolation carried out, yeah?
Yeah, before we took the fusible cover off.
Cool. Okay. Risk assessment's going to be following up. Installation specifications will be following up, correct?
Yeah.
Cool. So going to your site diary, mate, that we discussed.
Yeah.
All right, to just have a quick look at that so we can sort of follow along with how you deal with your day-to-day.
Yeah, sure.
And keep track of this job, because obviously you've got a quote. Is this a fixed price or are you on day rate?
It's fixed price.
Cool. So I can see what you've done there.
Back in February, but if we bring it up to so here we can see this is where I am now. That's the name of the customer.
Yeah.
And that's the address.
Cool. So I'm guessing any work schedule, you know, time scales that you had put together are out the window anyway.
Yes, they are, just because of everything that's going on at the moment.
Cool. And you're going to follow up your method statements. Manufacturer instructions, so anything that you sort of maybe first fixed or second fixed where you're following manufacturer instructions to install something. Smoke alarms, for instance, you know, on the first fix, making sure they're more than 300 away from an edge, all that jazz.
Yeah, so, for example, for the extractor upstairs, tells you how to actually install it, gives you diagrams on the wiring diagrams.
Yeah.
On how to ensure your timing is right for the overrun.
Yeah.
So yeah, we follow all those kind of bits.
Cool. Ideal. So using documentation such as relevant guidance notes or IE regulations, so on-site guides, clipping distances, you know, even as far down to making sure that you drill more than 50 mil down on the top of the joist. Yeah, all that sort of stuff. So when you're designing this, how far do you go in terms of making sure that you're meeting the requirements of regs and stuff?
Well, I've actually got both in my bag, which I carry every day with me. So, for example, zones in the bathroom, I would use the on-site guide just to double check that what I believe is correct, just for an example.
Yeah, cool. Perfect. Okay, so using documentation, material schedules, obviously you've got your tick sheets that you get from Denmans that you go through. Operating instructions, you've just basically shown me that. Tools and equipment, we've talked about that. Okay, so any contract variations that have occurred? I know you're discussing the fridge. Anything else other than the fridge, or was that the be-all and end-all for the contract variation?
I mean, there's been a couple of added extra sockets.
Yeah, well, that's a variation from the original spec, so...
Added at a later stage.
Yeah.
They were going to have like a spa bath, and they decided not to, so instead of having a switch from supplying spa bath, it's just a single socket now.
Cool. Okay, no problem. I take it that's outside the bathroom, yeah?
Yeah.
Cool. Okay, so you've got your site event diary. You've already talked about demonstrating how the client gave you permission to start the work. What about other workers? Do you work with these lads all the time, or are they a load of contractors you're not familiar with?
There's a load of contractors I'm not sure of who they are.
Okay, cool. So how have you demonstrated, say the plumber, relevant persons prior to commencement of work, including other workers? So how did you deal with, obviously there are a bunch of contractors that you're not familiar with, how did you make sure that you're demonstrating that A, they're ready for you to begin, and or the other way around? Was there
just by contact with them.
Yeah,
getting contact details before the job's starting, and just keeping in contact.
Cool.
Throughout the work.
And you've demonstrated the customer clients, and you've demonstrated that the public, because you knocked on next door to let them know that you're going to be noisy, and obviously if they said no chance I'm on nights, you may have changed what you were doing for the day. So I believe that's demonstration of authorization from the public. Pre-work damage we've discussed. Obviously when you got to your second fix in, the plasterer he's done an alright job, but there's a few issues, a few snags for him to come back to.
Yeah.
And you've had a chat with the client about that. When you got there then, initially, how did you make sure that what the customer wanted in terms of specification was compatible with the supply that you had? So let's go to the board and look at what supply we've got.
Yeah.
So if we go to the board now and have a look at the earth and arrangement in that. Cool. So what size fuse have we got there, mate?
It's 100 amp.
Oh, so you got plenty there.
Yeah,
cool.
81 type 2.
Cool. Earth and arrangement TNS.
Yeah.
Cool. What's the maximum fault loop impedance you can have on a TNS?
0.8.
Yeah, perfect. Cool, mate. That's all I need to see there for a second.
Yeah.
Okay, so ensuring that all planned locations for wiring systems and equipment are compatible with other site services. So let's talk about the data. Planned locations, making sure that they're not you're not running cables together, segregation, all that.
Yeah, just make sure that I'm 50 mil away from all of the services.
Cool. Measuring and marking out techniques. So what types of techniques of marking out have you done there, during your second fix?
Using a level and just a tape measure. I've also got a laser that I can use for downlights.
Yeah, cool. Perfect. Ensure that the planned locations are visually acceptable. How have you managed to make sure that they're visually acceptable? I'm assuming the client's obviously going to let you know if you're not, but...
What's that referring to?
It says it's first fix stroke second fix. Ensure that the planned locations are visually acceptable and in accordance with the specification. So obviously what you agreed with the client has actually happened and they're happy with it, basically.
Yeah, I mean, to ensure that, I actually mark everywhere he wants with a socket. Everywhere he wants a socket with a black marker.
Okay.
There's absolutely no
quarrels over it.
Yeah.
Cool. Okay, so program of work. Obviously, you've pretty much had one, but it's all gone peak tong. And working in a safe system of work, so safe isolation, only got your temporary supply there, always wearing PPE, that sort of thing. Coordination with other site services. So the BT, when we were planning this, we talked about how you had to get BT in to do the final connections on the primary side.
Yeah, on the master socket.
Yeah.
Just to liven it up.
Cool. Okay, following installation specifications. A lot of this goes on the same thing, mate. So cables that we've installed here. PVC?
Yeah, twin and earth, PVC. Yeah. 3-core flex.
Data?
Tail. Data cable.
Yeah. Tails, you said?
What's that, sorry?
Tails for the fuse board?
Yeah.
Yeah.
So, singles, yeah.
What about bonding for gas water?
Bonding for the gas and the water, yeah, as well.
Perfect. No containment.
No.
Isolators and switches, yes, we've seen that. Sockets, yes. Distribution boards, yes. Luminaires, yes. Looks like you had RCBO, so earth fault and overcurrent protected devices, that's all in one. Data socket outlets we've seen. How do you get rid of your materials, mate, on first fix, second fix? So obviously a bit more on first fix and second fix.
Prior to coming back, there was a skip at the front. Otherwise, I just follow waste removal regulations.
Yeah, cool. Do you take all the scrap back for yourself and trip it in, or?
I do, yeah. Once a year, I scrap all the copper.
Yeah, cool. Perfect. Confirm that the variations that's taken place have been agreed before you take action, so are you going to get paid for it, basically? So what trail, the fridge freezer got moved because the kitchen spec changed.
Yeah.
What was the trail you used to make sure that when it comes to billing time, your client, when you had to come back, I think you said in an evening time to correct it, because obviously the carpenter was there.
We quote straight away, so that evening there was a quote passed over and it was accepted before we actually completed the work.
Cool, so that's perfect. Okay, and verify that the completed system meets specifications in terms of ensuring that components are of the right type. Yeah, we've done all that. Okay, so safe isolation, mate, just walk me through it. So tell me what you would do in the event of needing to do safe isolation.
Yeah, locate the circuit needing to be isolated.
Yeah.
Speak to the customer or client, ensure that it's all right to isolate the equipment.
Yeah.
Turn the breaker off, lock it off.
Yeah.
Take the fuse board cover off.
Yeah.
And then the 3-step method. But first, prove in your test meter.
Yeah.
And then do the 3-step method on a single phase and the 10-step on a 3-phase board.
Yeah.
And then reprove your tester. And then once you've done that, it's safe for commencement of work.
Perfect. Okay, so ensuring the health and safety of others. We've done all this, done all that. Termination of PVC data and single core cables. Isolators, sockets, distribution board, luminaires, circuit breakers, earthing terminals. Talked about the fan, so that can be the electric motors and control equipment or the overcooker hood. Down lights or anything in there? I don't think there was there?
No, there's no downlights now.
Okay, so termination types then. So screw in, obviously, through sockets and light switches. Non-screw push fit?
Yeah, push fit. And lever connectors.
Like way goes, yeah?
Goes, yeah.
Cool. Ensuring that terminations are mechanically sound. How do you check that all your connections and your apprentices' connections are mechanically sound?
We would use a torque screwdriver.
Yeah. What about the old tug test?
And the tug test, that goes without saying.
Yeah. Okay. How are you identifying cables that need identification in terms of numbering, sleeving, marking out?
We've got a couple of two-way lighting systems where we use 3-core, and the black and the grey are actually live. So we mark them up with brown sleeving.
Yeah, perfect. And at the board, all the legends on the stickers on the board?
Yeah.
Cool. And again, dispose of unwanted materials, we've covered that. So then looking at testing, obviously safe isolation, I can see that the board's already off at the moment. You're doing the dead tests, and you're going to send me your EIC certificate this evening, yeah?
Yeah.
So in terms of when you're doing your schedule of inspections, the old tick box exercise, how are you proving that, for instance, you've selected the right conductors, cables and cords and protective devices? Does that make sense? So IBINIZ?
Yeah, so I know that, for example, a 2.5 has a cable rating of 27 amps.
Yeah.
So I designed that circuit. So I've got a couple of radial circuits. I know that they're clip direct. So I know that the cable rating is 27 amps. So therefore, the B20s that I've selected, I know are going to protect the cable.
Okay, just making sure you understand all that. Just for the, I know that you've done your 18th edition and all that stuff. Sucking eggs, mate. I know. Routing.
You know it, but it's just saying it, isn't
it? Yeah. What about routing zones? Do you want to just walk me through a basic room, maybe behind you there on that door frame where zones are?
Yeah. So 150 mil away from the edges of a wall.
Yeah.
So, for example, 150 mil out, but also directly in line with the socket, vertically and horizontally.
Yeah.
Same with the light switch as well.
And not forgetting the old 150 mil on the ceiling lines as well.
Yeah, 150 mil ceiling line and the size of the wall. Yeah.
Perfect. So all you need to do then, mate, is obviously once you've supplied me with the installation certificate, I can see that you've carried out continuity, installation resistance, polarity, etc. So once you've done that, I don't need you to run through it with me. I've seen you do a bit of testing on the last observation. I'm quite happy that you can do it, no problem. So if you just get those certificates over to me, mate, that should cover off that you've done those, testing. The only thing I will ask is, how do you verify your results are correct?
I verify it with the BS7671.
Yeah. Okay. And then moving on to confirming that they meet guidance note 3. Yeah, that's fine. If you're doing them correctly. Clarify commissioning procedure. So the handover process. Talk to me about what you do with your clients in general, and particularly this job, in terms of commissioning, handover, all that stuff.
Yeah, so once I'm complete, I'll run through with him all the isolation procedures. For example, for the hob, the oven, the extractors, the bathroom, and the hob one. Show them where they're located. Show them the consumer unit. Show them what to do in the event of something tripping. Show them the test button, which is something that needs to be done 6 monthly now.
Yeah.
And also show them how to silence the alarm, but also test the alarm, which needs to be monthly. And
in terms of maintenance schedule, so let's, for instance, say when the next test date is. So if we tested it today, which is the 26th of May, 2020, when's the next test date due for this one?
It's actually going to be a holiday let, so it'll be in 5 years' time.
Yeah, you're going to reduce it because it's holiday let, no problem. Yeah. All right, mate, I'm quite happy with all that. That's everything covered. We've gone through the list. We've done a walk round. So yeah, if you can just get me those risk assessment method statement, your EIC paperwork, and what was the last one I wanted from you? I can't remember what it was. Quote or specification, yeah.
Yeah.
All right, mate.
Cool.
Ideal.
Yeah, no worries. Thanks a lot, Dan.
No problem.